The transport shuttle shuddered as it docked with Training Station Epsilon 7. G1 Park pressed her hand against the cold window, watching the massive structure come into view. The station orbited a purple gas giant, its metal surface gleaming under the distant sun. She had dreamed of this moment for 3 years, ever since Earth joined the Galactic Coalition. Now that she was here, her stomach twisted with nervous energy. The airlock hissed open. G1 grabbed her single duffel bag and stepped into the corridor. Immediately, she felt the difference. Her boots felt heavier. Each step required more effort than it should. The station's gravity was stronger than Earth's, calibrated for the Dravik species, who ran most of the Coalition military. She straightened her spine and kept walking. She would not show weakness on her first day. The intake hall was enormous, filled with beings from across the galaxy. Towering Dravik warriors stood nearly 3 meters tall, their skin like rough stone, their voices rumbling like thunder. Valkyrie soldiers settled on 6 legs, their chitinous armor clicking with each movement. Prion strategists floated past on hover platforms, their bodies half flesh and half machine. Among them, G1 looked small and soft and terribly alone. A Dravik instructor stood at the front of the hall. His name tag read Takvin, and his chest displayed more medals than G1 could count. He called the new trainees to attention with a voice that shook the floor. One by one, species were called forward for initial assessment. G1 watched as Dravik recruits lifted massive weights with ease. Valkyrie trainees moved through combat drills with blinding speed. Prion candidates solved tactical puzzles in seconds. Then Takvin called her name. G1 Park, Human Earth. The hall went quiet. G1 walked forward, feeling hundreds of eyes on her. She had known she would be examined, judged, measured against beings who evolved on harsher worlds than hers. But knowing it and feeling it were different things. Takvin gestured to the testing apparatus. Grip strength first. G1 placed her hand on the device and squeezed as hard as she could. Numbers flashed on the display. Somewhere behind her, she heard laughter. High-pitched clicking laughter from the Valkyrie section. She released the device and stepped back. Takvin read the results aloud. 240 newtons. Adequate for a human, I suppose. He paused, then looked at the Dravik scores. Our average is 1,200 newtons. Valkyrie averaged 900. More laughter rippled through the hall. G1 kept her face neutral. She had expected this. What she had not expected was what Takvin did next. He reached down and took her hand in his massive palm. His fingers could have crushed every bone in her hand without effort. He lifted her arm high, displaying her hand to the assembled trainees like a specimen. Look at this, Takvin said, his voice carrying across the hall. Human hands, small, soft, fragile. These hands were made for delicate work, for touching screens, for manipulating tiny tools. He turned her hand over, examining it. These hands were not forged in volcanic pits. They were not hardened in pressure chambers. They are weak by design. G1 felt heat rising in her face, but she did not pull away. She met Takvin's eyes and waited. There is no shame in biological limitation, the instructor continued. Humans have their place in the coalition, but perhaps not in combat roles. Perhaps not here. He released her hand. G1 lowered it slowly, curling her fingers into a loose fist. She said nothing. There was nothing to say that would change his mind. Only actions would do that. The rest of the intake assessment passed in a blur. G1 performed adequately in most tests, poorly in others. She was not the weakest trainee present, but she was far from the strongest. By the time the session ended, she had a new nickname. She heard it whispered as she left the hall. Porcelain dot in the corridor outside. A human officer was waiting. He wore the uniform of a logistics corporal, and his name tagged read Lee Hyun-woo. He fell into step beside Ji-won without speaking until they were alone. "You handled that well," Hyun-woo said quietly. "Did I have a choice?" Ji-won asked. "There's always a choice. The last 2 humans who came through here didn't make it past week 2. They couldn't handle the mockery." He glanced around, then lowered his voice further. "But you're different. You know the protocol." Ji-won nodded. The protocol was secret, known only to select human military personnel. It was the reason she was really here. Hyun-woo led her to her assigned quarters. The room was small and bare, with 2 bunks. Her roommate had not arrived yet. As soon as the door closed, Hyun-woo pulled a sealed case from his jacket. "Everything you need is in here," he said. "Remember, you wear them at all times except when you sleep. When the time comes, you'll know." Ji-won opened the case. Inside were compression bands made of dense material, designed to add weight to her body without being visible under her uniform. There were bands for her wrists, ankles, and a vest for her torso. Together, they would add 40 kilograms to her body weight. Combined with the station's already high gravity, she would be training under nearly twice the load of Earth normal. "How long?" she asked. "As long as it takes," Hyun-woo said. "Could be weeks. Could be months. You'll struggle. You'll finish last in every drill. They'll mock you every day. But when the moment comes, you'll show them what humans are really made of." After he left, Ji-won sat on her bunk and held one of the wristbands. It was heavier than it looked. She thought about her brother Minho back on Earth, still recovering from his accident. She thought about everyone back home who had been told they were not strong enough, not fast enough, not good enough. She thought about Takvin holding up her hand like it was made of glass. Then she strapped on the first band. Then the second. Then the vest. Her body immediately felt the difference. Moving would be harder now. Every exercise would be torture. But that was the point. When her roommate arrived an hour later, a Prian named Dae-sung, he found Ji-won doing push-ups in the corner. She was moving slowly, struggling with each repetition. Dae-sung watched for a moment, then shook his head. "You should save your energy," he said, not unkindly. "Training starts tomorrow. It will be difficult for you." Ji-won finished her set and stood up. "I know," she said. What she did not say was that difficult was exactly what she needed. The alarm sounded at 0500 hours, dragging Ji-won from uneasy sleep. Her body ached in places she had forgotten existed. The weighted bands had done their work during the night, making even rest feel like labor. She rolled out of her bunk and nearly stumbled. Across the room, Dae-sung was already awake, his cybernetic enhancements glowing softly in the dim light. "You slept in your training clothes?" he asked, noting her rumpled uniform. "Saves time," Ji-won lead. The truth was that removing and replacing the hidden weights would raise questions she could not answer. The first morning run nearly broke her. 50 kilometers through the station's outer ring, wearing full combat gear. The Dravik trainees loped ahead with easy strides, their long legs eating up distance. The Volcari moved in coordinated packs, their multiple limbs giving them unnatural speed. Even the Prion, floating on their platforms, kept pace without visible effort. Ji-won ran alone at the back. Each step felt like she was pushing through mud. The weighted bands pulled at her limbs. The high gravity pressed down on her shoulders. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. But she kept moving, always moving, never stopping. She finished 40 minutes after everyone else. Takvin was waiting at the finish line with a datapad. 43 minutes behind standard pace, he said, not looking up. "This is unacceptable." "Yes, instructor," Ji-won managed between gasps. "You will repeat the course after evening training. Every day until you improve." "Yes, Instructor. Takvin finally looked at her. There was no cruelty in his eyes, only disappointment. Somehow that was worse. I do not enjoy seeing you struggle, trainee. But I cannot lower standards for one species. Excellence demands sacrifice. G1 straightened despite her exhaustion. I understand, instructor. I will meet the standard. We shall see, Takvin said, and walked away. The rest of the day followed the same pattern. Hand-to-hand combat training against opponents twice her size. Equipment drills with weapons designed for Dravic hands. Zero-gravity tactical simulations where her smaller mass became a disadvantage. In every exercise, G1 finished last. In every drill, she struggled where others succeeded. The training pod became her particular nemesis. It was a cylindrical device, 3 meters long and weighing 340 kilograms. It served multiple purposes during training: combat simulation, strength conditioning, rescue practice. Trainees were expected to move it regularly, repositioning it for different exercises. Dravic trainees lifted it with one hand. Their enormous strength made the pod look like a toy. Valkyrie worked in pairs, their 6-limbed bodies distributing the weight efficiently. Even the Prion managed, using their platform's anti-gravity assistance. G1 needed both hands and all her strength just to drag it. Every time she approached the pod, she felt eyes on her, watching, judging, mocking. On the third day, 2 Valkyrie trainees approached her during a break. Their names were Krell and Vixna, and they had been laughing at her since day one. Krell's mandibles clicked in what passed for a Valkyrie smile. "We have started a betting pool," Krell said cheerfully. "How many days until the human quits?" "I have 5 days," Vixna added. Krell is more optimistic. He says 7. G1 took a drink from her water container. "What happens if I do not quit?" Krell's clicking intensified. "That is not one of the betting options." They walked away laughing. G1 watched them go. She could have been angry. Part of her wanted to be angry. But anger was a waste of energy, and she had none to spare. That night, alone in her quarters while Daesoon was at study session, G1 removed the weighted bands. Her wrists were bruised beneath them. Her ankles ached. The vest had left red marks across her shoulders. She examined the damage in the mirror and allowed herself one moment of doubt. This was only week 1. She had months of this ahead. Months of being the slowest, the weakest, the one everyone expected to fail. Could she really endure it? Her device chimed. A video call from Earth. She answered, and her brother Minho's face appeared on the screen. He was in his apartment, and she could see the physical therapy equipment in the background. "G1, how is space? Have you fought any aliens yet?" She smiled despite her exhaustion. "It is not like that, Minho. Mostly running and lifting heavy things." "Are you the strongest there?" The innocent question hit harder than any of Takvin's criticisms. "No, not even close." Minho's face fell. "Oh, but you will get stronger, right?" "Yes," G1 said. "I will get stronger." "Good, because I am getting stronger too. Look." He held up his arm and flexed. The muscle was thin, still rebuilding after his accident. But it was there. "The therapist says I am making good progress. She says I might walk without the crutches by next month." G1 felt something tight in her chest loosen. "That is wonderful, Minho." "It is hard," her brother admitted. "Sometimes I want to quit. But then I think about you up there with the aliens, being brave. So I keep trying." After the call ended, G1 sat in silence. Minho was working to walk. She was working to prove something bigger. They were both carrying weight in different ways. She strapped the bands back on. Week 2 was worse than week 1. Takvin increased the training intensity, adding night exercises and extended combat simulations. Jeswan's performance improved marginally, but not enough to change anyone's opinion. She was still porcelain, still fragile, still the weakest link. During a team exercise in week 3, her squad failed to complete an objective because G1 could not move an equipment crate fast enough. The squad leader, a Dravic named Kurdan, said nothing. But Daesoon, her roommate, finally lost his patience. "You do not belong here," he said that night, his voice flat. "This is not an insult. It is simple observation. Humans are not built for combat roles. You would serve the Coalition better in technical positions." G1 was lying on her bunk staring at the ceiling. Every muscle in her body hurt. "Maybe," she said. "Then why continue?" Daesoon asked. "Why endure this?" "Because someone has to," G1 said. "Someone has to show that we can." "But you cannot," Daesoon said. "Not cruelly, but as fact. You are trying to lift a weight that is too heavy. There is no shame in admitting it." G1 turned her head to look at him. "Yes, there is. There is shame in not trying." Daesoon said nothing more. But the next morning, she noticed he had requested a room transfer by week 6. G1 had become invisible. Trainees no longer mocked her because she was no longer worth the effort. She was simply there, struggling in the background while the real soldiers trained. Even Krell and Vixena had stopped collecting bets. G1 had lasted longer than anyone expected, but she clearly would not succeed. Hyenwoo met her in a quiet corridor one evening. He looked worried. "The demonstration is scheduled for next week," he said. "But you look exhausted. We can delay if you need more time." "No," G1 said. "I am ready. Are you sure? Because if this goes wrong, it will not just affect you. It will affect how the Coalition sees all of humanity." G1 thought about Minho walking without crutches, about everyone back home who was told they were not enough, about Takvan holding up her hand like it was made of glass. "I am sure," she said. "Let them see what fragile hands can really do." Week 6 ended with an announcement that sent whispers through the entire training station. A special exercise was scheduled for all trainees. A rescue simulation that would test strength, endurance, and determination under extreme conditions. Takvan explained it during the morning assembly, his voice echoing through the hall. "You will carry a training pod through an obstacle course. The course includes high-gravity sections, zero-gravity transitions, and various physical barriers. This simulates evacuating wounded personnel from a damaged ship. Your time will be recorded and factored into your final evaluation." G1 felt dozens of eyes turn toward her. Everyone knew what this meant. The training pod that she could barely move with both hands, she would now have to carry alone through the hardest course yet. This was not just a test. This was an execution. Takvan continued. "Each trainee will be assigned a pod and route based on their current performance scores. The exercise begins in 3 days. Prepare accordingly." That afternoon, the assignments were posted. G1 stared at her designation. Pod 7, Route Alpha, the heaviest pod. The longest, most difficult path. She had expected this, but seeing it confirmed still sent ice through her stomach. Krell found her in the corridor later. The Valkyrie's mandibles clicked in false sympathy. "Poor porcelain. Route Alpha has defeated Dravic trainees. What hope does a human have?" "I will finish the course," G1 said quietly. "Perhaps you will," Vixen added, scuttling up beside her partner. "In 12 hours. Maybe 15. The record is 4 minutes and 30 seconds, held by Kurdan. Even if you finish, you will be last by an embarrassing margin." They walked away laughing. G1 leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. 3 days. She had 3 days to prepare for the moment that would define not just her career, but humanity's reputation in the coalition. That night, Hyun-woo visited her quarters. He carried a small medical scanner and ran it over her body, checking for stress fractures and muscle damage. The weighted bands had taken their toll. 6 weeks of training under nearly twice Earth's gravity had pushed her body to its absolute limit. "You are close to injury," Hyun-woo said, reading the scanner results. "If you push much harder, something will break." "I only need to hold together for 3 more days," Ji-won said. "And the course itself. Do not forget, you will be pushing your body beyond anything you have done so far." Ji-won sat on her bunk. The room felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in. "Do you think I can do it?" Hyun-woo was quiet for a moment. "I think you can do things that will surprise everyone on this station. But Ji-won, you need to understand what is at stake. When you remove those weights, when you show them what you really are, there is no going back. Every human who comes after you will be judged by what you do in that moment." "I know," Ji-won said. "I have been thinking about nothing else for 6 weeks." The next 2 days passed in a strange blur. Training continued as normal, but everyone was focused on the upcoming exercise. Trainees practiced with the pods, refining their grip and movement techniques. Ji-won practiced too, but she could see the pity in Takvin's eyes when he watched her struggle. On the morning of the exercise, she woke before the alarm. Her body felt heavy and tired, but also strangely light. Today the weights came off. Today everything changed. The exercise was scheduled for the afternoon, giving trainees time to prepare mentally and physically. Ji-won spent the morning alone, stretching and meditating. She thought about Minho learning to walk again, about her parents who had worried when she left Earth, about every human who had ever been told they were too weak, too small, too fragile. At noon, Hyun-woo found her in the observation deck. Below, technicians were setting up the obstacle course in the main training bay. The course was brutal even to look at. High walls, narrow passages, gravity fields that shifted from heavy to weightless. "Are you ready?" Hyun-woo asked. "Yes," Ji-won said. "Then, are there many watching?" Hyun-woo grimaced. "Word has spread. Nearly 200 trainees will be there. They want to see the human fail." "No one fail." "Good," Ji-won said. "Let them watch." The training bay was packed when Ji-won entered. Trainees from every species lined the observation platforms. She could feel their eyes, hear their whispers. There was Krell and Vixna clicking to each other. There was Dae-soon watching with careful neutrality. There was Kordan, the current record holder, arms crossed confidently. And there was Takvin, standing beside the starting line with his datapad. When he saw Ji-won, something flickered across his face. Not quite pity, not quite regret. Something heavier. The exercise began with the other trainees. One by one, they grabbed their assigned pods and raced through the course. Times were called out as each finished. Drevik trainees averaged 4 minutes 30 seconds. Valkyrie averaged 5 minutes 15. Prion trainees, using tactical efficiency over brute strength, averaged 6 minutes. Finally, only Ji-won remained. The bay went quiet as she approached the starting line. Pod 7 waited for her, massive and heavy and impossible. 340 kilograms of dense metal. The weight of every expectation that had ever been placed on human shoulders. Takvin stepped forward. Ji-won thought he was going to wish her luck or offer some final instruction. Instead, he did something worse. He reached down and took her hand again, just as he had done 6 weeks ago. He lifted it high, displaying it to the assembled crowd. "Look one final time at these hands," Takvin said, his voice carrying across the bay. Human hands. Fragile hands. These hands were made for delicate work, not for the harsh demands of warfare. They were not forged in fire. They were not hardened by evolution. They are weak, and there is no shame in that weakness. He released her hand and stepped back. It is no dishonor to acknowledge one's biological limits. Humanity has many gifts to offer the coalition, but physical strength is not among them. The crowd murmured agreement. Some nodded. Others looked away, already losing interest in what they expected to be a slow, painful failure. G1 stood at the starting line and looked at the pod. Then she looked at her hands. Fragile, Takvin had called them. Weak, made for delicate work. 6 weeks of mockery echoed in her memory. 6 weeks of finishing last. 6 weeks of being invisible, irrelevant, insignificant. She reached for the seal on her left wristband, the weighted compression band that had been her constant burden for 42 days. She unfastened it and let it drop. It hit the floor with a heavy clang that echoed through the suddenly silent bay. Then the right wristband. Another clang. The crowd stirred. Confused whispers rippled through the observers. What was the human doing? G1 bent and removed the ankle bands. Left, right. 2 more heavy impacts. Then, she unfastened her training jacket and pulled it open, revealing the weighted vest underneath. 40 kilograms of additional mass that she had carried every single moment since arriving at this station. She unbuckled it and let it fall. The impact shook the floor. Trainees leaned forward, trying to understand. Takvin's eyes widened. Even Hyam Wu, who knew the plan, looked nervous. G-1 stood up straight. Without the weights, her body felt impossibly light. Like she could fly. Like she could lift the station itself. She rolled her shoulders and flexed her fingers. These fragile hands. These weak human hands. She approached Pod 7. The timer started. And G1 reached down with one hand, gripped the handle, and lifted. The training pod rose into the air like it weighed nothing. 340 kilograms of solid metal, held aloft in one human hand. G1's arm did not shake. Her grip did not falter. She stood there for one perfect moment. The pod balanced easily in her grasp, and looked at Takvin. The instructor's expression had gone completely blank. Around the bay, absolute silence reigned. 200 trainees stood frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. Then Gul-1 moved. Not walked. Not jogged. She ran. The first obstacle was a 3-meter wall. Dravic trainees typically had to set down their pods to climb it. G1 did not slow. She hit the wall at full speed, planted one foot on its face, and vaulted over while keeping the pod secure in her right hand. She landed on the other side in a roll, came up running, and accelerated. The crowd erupted. Shouts of disbelief echoed through the bay. Trainees pressed against the observation platforms, trying to get a better view. This could not be real. Humans were weak. Everyone knew humans were weak. G1 proved them wrong with every step. The narrow passage that required careful sidestep movements. She simply powered through, her smaller frame an advantage now. The balance beam that crossed a pit. She sprinted across it like it was solid ground. The rope climb that exhausted even Dravic arms. She ascended one-handed. The pod dangling from her other hand like a piece of luggage. Hyun Woo was watching the timer. His eyes went wide as the numbers climbed. She was fast. Impossibly fast. Faster than anyone had expected. Faster than the training protocols had predicted. The high-gravity corridor came next. This section increased gravity to 2.2 times Earth normal, designed to test strength under maximum load. It was the section where most trainees slowed significantly, where some failed entirely. Kordan had lost 20 seconds here during his record run. G1 entered the corridor and did not slow. If anything, she accelerated. 6 weeks of training under weighted conditions. 6 weeks in the station's 1.4G standard had transformed her body into something extraordinary. The 2.2G corridor was less than what she had been enduring all along. To her, this was easy. She burst out of the corridor and transitioned immediately into the zero-gravity section. Here, most trainees struggled with the pod's mass, unable to control its momentum in weightlessness. G1 used physics and engineering instinct. She pushed off with the pod, using its mass to propel herself forward, then caught herself on handholds, redirecting momentum with precision. She moved through 0G like she had been born to it. Takvin was running along the observation platform now, trying to keep up with her progress. His datapad forgotten in his hand, his mouth open in shock. Other instructors joined him, pointing and shouting times that seemed impossible. The final obstacle was a vertical shaft, 50 meters straight up with handholds spaced for dramatic reach. Climbers had to pull themselves and their pod against the station's normal gravity. It was exhausting. It was brutal. Cordan had lost another 15 seconds here. G1 grabbed the first handhold and pulled. Her muscles, freed from 6 weeks of weighted suppression, exploded with power. She climbed like gravity did not exist, like the pod in her left hand weighed nothing. Hand over hand, meter after meter, rising toward the finish line at the shaft's top, she pulled herself over the edge and slammed her hand on the timer. The buzzer sounded. The bay went completely silent again as everyone looked at the main display board. 3 minutes. 47 seconds. A new station record by 43 seconds. G1 stood at the finish line, breathing hard but not excessively. She was tired. Yes, but not broken. Not defeated. She set the pod down gently and turned to face the assembled crowd. Her fragile hands showed not a tremor. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Takvin arrived, running up the stairs to the finish platform. The massive Dravik instructor approached slowly, his eyes moving from G1 to the timer to the discarded weight bands far below. His expression was complex, cycling through shock, confusion, understanding, and something that might have been shame. How? He asked, his rumbling voice quiet. How is this possible? G1 took a deep breath. Earth gravity is 1.0. This station's gravity is 1.4. For 6 weeks, I trained at your standard gravity while wearing 40 kilograms of additional weight. My effective training load was approximately 1.8 times Earth normal, nearly twice what my body evolved to handle. She held up her hands, the ones he had called fragile. These hands were not weak. They were weighted. Every step I took was harder than yours. Every exercise I performed carried more burden than you faced. You saw me struggle and called it weakness. It was strength carrying a load you never noticed. Other trainees were gathering now, climbing to the finish platform, pressing close to hear. Krell and Vixena pushed to the front, their mandibles slack with shock. Hyan Wu arrived, breathing heavily from running up the stairs. He addressed the crowd. Every human trainee in Coalition service follows this protocol. We do not send our strongest. We send average candidates who train under handicap conditions. What you saw today, this record performance, came from a mid-tier graduate of Seoul Defense Academy. He paused to let that sink in. She is not exceptional by human standards. She is typical. Now imagine what our actual elite forces can do. Kodan stepped forward, the Dravik, whose record had just been shattered. He looked at G1 with something approaching respect. You carried extra weight for 6 weeks? Willingly? Yes, G1 said. Why? Why not show your true strength from the beginning? Because you needed to see the struggle first, G1 said. You needed to understand that strength is not just what you are born with. It is what you choose to carry, what you refuse to put down, what you lift when everyone tells you that you cannot. Krell's clicking voice cut through the crowd. But why mock yourself? Why endure our insults? G1 looked at the Valkyrie pair directly. Because my people have been enduring insults for much longer than 6 weeks. Every species that joins the coalition starts at the bottom. Judged, dismissed, called too weak or too slow or too primitive. You think your betting pool hurt me? It motivated me. Vixen's limbs shifted uncomfortably. We did not know. You did not ask, G1 said. You saw what you expected to see and stopped looking deeper. Takvin had been standing silently, processing everything. Now he stepped forward and knelt, bringing his massive frame down to G1's eye level. It was a position of profound respect in Dravic culture. Around the platform, gasps erupted from the Dravic trainees. I have wronged you, Takvin said, his voice heavy. I took your hand and called it fragile. I displayed it as evidence of weakness. I shamed you before your peers. He paused, and his next words came with difficulty. I allowed my prejudice to blind me to the truth. You are not weak. Your people are not weak. I apologize. G1 felt something tight in her chest release. This was what she had worked for. Not just the record. Not just proving her own strength. But changing how one of the coalition's most respected instructors saw humanity. I accept your apology, instructor, she said. And I hope you will remember this lesson. Strength comes in many forms. Sometimes the fragile hands are the strongest ones of all. They soon pushed through the crowd. The Prion who had been her roommate, who had told her she did not belong, floated before her on his platform. His cybernetic eye focused on her with new understanding. I told you that you did not belong here, he said. I was wrong. Will you forgive my ignorance? Only if you help me teach others, G1 said. This cannot be about one human proving a point. It must be about changing how all species see each other. Daesung's mechanical components whirred as he nodded. Agreed. I would be honored to learn from you. The crowd began to disperse, trainees heading to their quarters in small groups, talking excitedly. The story would spread quickly. By tomorrow, everyone on Epsilon 7 would know. By next week, it would reach Coalition Command. The human who lifted the pod with one hand and shattered every assumption about her species. Hyan Wu approached G1 as the platform emptied. You did it, he said quietly. You actually did it. G1 looked down at the training bay below, at the scattered weight bands that had been her burden for so long. We did it, she corrected. Every human who came before me and failed, they did it too. They showed me what not to do. They gave me the path. What now? Hyan Wu asked. G1 smiled. Now I finish my training. And then I make sure no one ever forgets what fragile hands can really do. 3 months passed like water flowing around stones. Training continued at Epsilon 7, but everything had changed. G1 no longer trained alone at the back of formations. She ran with the lead group, matching pace with Dravic warriors who had once lapped her twice. In combat drills, her smaller size became an advantage, allowing her to slip past defenses that stopped larger opponents. The training pod, once her nemesis, now felt light in her hands. The other trainees changed too. Krell and Vixena, the Valkyrie pair who had started the betting pool mocking her failure, became her unexpected allies. One morning, Krell approached her during breakfast with an embarrassed clicking of mandibles. The betting pool money, he said. 230 credits. Vixena and I discussed it. We want to donate it. Donate it to what? G1 asked. A cross-species training exchange program, Vixena explained. Where trainees from different species learn each other's methods. So that what happened to you, the mockery and ignorance, does not happen to others. G1 smiled. That is a good use for it. I accept. The program was established within a month. The first exchange sent 3 Dravic trainees to Earth to learn human training techniques. Their reports back to Epsilon 7 were humbling. Human military academies pushed candidates beyond what Dravik considered reasonable, using psychology and determination to overcome physical limitations. The Dravik trainees' return changed, speaking of human resilience with genuine respect. Takvin changed most of all. The instructor who had held up G1's hand and called it fragile now spent hours studying human combat doctrine. He submitted formal reports to Coalition Command, recommending a complete revision of assessment protocols. His words were blunt and honest. "We've been measuring the wrong things," his report stated. "We measure initial strength and call it potential. We measure size and call it capability. We ignore determination, adaptability, and the willingness to exceed one's own limitations. The human trainee G1 Park has shown us that our methods are incomplete. We must do better." The report reached the Coalition High Command. Within weeks, Takvin received new orders. He was to serve as liaison to Earth's military academies, learning human training methods firsthand and developing integration protocols for mixed species units. Before he left Epsilon 7, he found G1 in the training bay. "I wanted to thank you," he said, the words difficult for the proud Dravik. "You gave me a gift, though I did not deserve it." "What gift?" G1 asked. "Humility," Takvin said. "I have trained warriors for 20 years. I thought I understood strength. You showed me I understood nothing." He paused, looking at his own massive hands. "These hands can crush stone, but they could not do what yours did. They could not carry a burden silently, endure mockery with dignity, and then prove everyone wrong with grace." "You will do well on Earth," G1 said. "Our instructors will appreciate your willingness to learn." After Takvin left, Daesung approached. The Prion had become G1's closest friend on the station. His initial skepticism transformed into genuine curiosity about human capabilities. "I have a question," he said. "Why did you really come here?" "The truth, not the official reason." G1 considered her answer carefully. "My brother Minho was injured in an industrial accident. During his recovery, people kept telling him what he could not do anymore. Could not walk normally. Could not return to his old job. Could not live the life he had planned. He was so tired of hearing about his limitations. And he wanted to show him that limitations can be overcome," Daesung said. "I wanted to show everyone," G1 corrected. "Every human who has been told they are too weak. Every alien species that joins the coalition and gets dismissed as inferior. I wanted to prove that being underestimated is an opportunity, not a prison." Graduation came on a clear day, the station's viewports showing the purple gas giant in full glory. Jigu stood with her class, wearing the formal uniform of a Coalition Tactical Operations Specialist. Her scores were the highest in the class, not just among humans. Among everyone, when her name was called, the assembled graduates did something unprecedented. Every trainee, regardless of species, stamped their feet or clicked their limbs or activated their platform's bass resonators. The unified sound shook the ceremony hall. It was the Coalition's highest honor, reserved for warriors who had earned absolute respect. G-1 accepted her certification from the station commander and returned to her place in formation. She caught Hyan Wu's eye in the audience. He was grinning, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. The protocol had worked. Humanity's reputation in the Coalition military had changed forever. After the ceremony, G1 received her assignment. Instructor position at Epsilon 7, developing integration protocols for human-alien mixed units. It was exactly what she had hoped for. But there was a problem. "I need 6 months before I accept," she told the station commander. 6 months is a long time, Specialist. "May I ask why?" "I need to go home first," G1 said. "There is someone I need to see." The transport to Earth took 2 weeks. G1 spent the journey watching the stars and thinking about everything that had happened. She had left Earth as an unknown trainee. She was returning as the human who broke the station record and changed Coalition training doctrine. The weight of it felt heavier than any compression band. Her family met her at the Seoul spaceport. Her mother cried. Her father stood proud and silent, emotion too big for words. And Minho stood on his own, no crutches, no support, just his own 2 legs holding him up. "You walked," Ji-won said, her voice breaking. "You ran," Minho replied. "I saw the videos. Everyone on Earth saw them. You lifted that pod, and I thought, if Ji-won can do that, I can learn to walk." That night, Ji-won gave him a gift. A package containing weighted compression bands and an application to the Coalition training program. Minho held them like they were made of gold. "Are you serious?" He asked. "You said you wanted to be strong," Ji-won said. "This is how we do it. We carry weight that no one sees. We struggle when everyone expects us to quit. And then, when the moment comes, we show them what we really are." Minho looked at the bands, then at his sister. "What if I fail?" "Then you fail having tried. But I do not think you will fail. I think you will surprise everyone, just like I did." 6 months later, Ji-won returned to Epsilon 7 as an instructor. The new training cycle was beginning, and she stood in the intake hall watching fresh recruits arrive. The group included 3 humans, 2 Dravik, 4 Valkyrie, and 2 Pryan. One of the humans was a young woman named Sujin, who looked terrified and determined in equal measure. The intake assessment began. One by one, recruits were called forward to demonstrate grip strength, endurance, and basic combat aptitude. When Sujin's turn came, her scores were predictably low compared to the alien recruits. Ji-won saw the familiar pattern beginning. The sideways glances. The whispered comments. Then one of the Dravik recruits, a young warrior named Takavar, made a dismissive gesture. "Humans again?" We all saw the videos of Park Ji-won. One exceptional individual does not prove a species is worthy of combat roles. This one looks even weaker. Before Ji-won could respond, Krell stepped forward. The Valkyrie was now a junior instructor, his mandibles clicking with authority. "I once made that exact mistake," Krell said, his voice carrying across the hall. "I looked at fragile human hands and assumed weakness. I laughed and made bets about failure. Then those fragile hands lifted 340 kilograms with a grip I could not match. They carried a burden I never noticed. They proved me a fool." He turned to Takavar. "I suggest you do not repeat my error. Watch carefully. Learn quickly. And never, ever assume that small hands mean small strength." The hall went quiet. Sujin stood straighter, her expression shifting from fear to hope. Ji-won caught her eye and nodded slightly. The young woman would face challenges. She would struggle. She would be mocked and dismissed. But she would not face it alone. That evening, Ji-won sat in her new instructor's quarters and recorded a message. It would be uploaded to the Coalition training database, accessible to every recruit from every species across known space. "My name is Park Ji-won," she began. "I am human, from Earth. When I arrived at this station, an instructor held up my hand and called it fragile. He was right about one thing. Human hands are fragile compared to Dravik claws or Valkyrie pincers. Our bodies are soft compared to species forged on harsher worlds. We are small and weak and easy to dismiss." She paused, holding up her own hand to the camera. "But fragility is not the opposite of strength. It is a different kind of strength. It is the strength to bend without breaking. The strength to carry weight that no one sees. The strength to endure when quitting would be easier. The strength to prove everyone wrong, not with words, but with action." She lowered her hand. "If you are watching this, you have probably been told you are enough. Not strong enough. Not fast enough. Not good enough. Maybe your species is new to the coalition. Maybe you are the first of your kind to attempt military service. Maybe everyone expects you to fail. I want you to know something. They expected me to fail too. They watched me struggle for 6 weeks and called me porcelain. They bet on how quickly I would quit. They held up my hands as proof that humans did not belong in combat roles. G1 smiled.